Jupiter, the largest of all the planets in the solar system. This gas giant has been our protector and bodyguard since its formation over 4 billion years ago. All its moons orbiting around it hold mystery and fascination to NASA. From its volcanic moon Io to the famous Great Red Spot anticyclonic storm, which has been going around Jupiter for 300 years. But unfortunately, this Great Red Spot pretty soon won't be all that great anymore. In the second episode of the second season of Journey Through Space, we will be joining Juno on its mission to the gas giant, as Jupiter holds the title as King of the Solar System. Bow before the King, Jupiter, the King of the Solar System. There is no other planet in the solar system, as far as we know, that's quite like Jupiter. This planet is absolutely huge. I can't even exaggerate just how massive Jupiter is. This gas giant is the planet with the most moons, 82 to be exact, which I'll go on with those later. But Jupiter is a planet of strength and power, which hence is the reason of why it's our bodyguard and protector from potentially deadly asteroids and comets. As you can see here, zooming out further and further, you get beyond Jupiter's inner moons, which are Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. But outside of that, there are a lot, and I mean a lot, more moons. Jupiter is basically a web of moons. But none of this can explain just how massive Jupiter really is. Named after the Roman king of the gods, who was also the Roman god of the sky and thunder, Jupiter really lives up to its name and to that title as the king of the solar system. This colossus of a planet is unlike any other that we know of so far. This planet is absolutely massive. Like there is nothing else that can compare to Jupiter. But if you really want to go deep inside Jupiter, you are gonna have to take a look at its clouds. But before we do that, let's pay a visit to the 4 Galilean moons of Jupiter. This is where it all gets interesting. In the early 1600s, Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei aimed his telescope at the gas giant Jupiter for the very first time. He became the very first astronomer in the world to do so. He discovered 4 particular moons that caught his attention. And now let's meet these 4 Galilean moons that Galileo discovered back in 1609 and 1610. Up first, we have the volcanic moon Io. Tiny and may look like a ball of moldy cheese, but is anything but that. This tiny volcanic moon has 400 active volcanoes all across its surface, of which 150 of them erupt at a time and at the same time as well. But if you're thinking of settling on this moon, you better think again, because living next to a volcano, let alone on a volcanic moon, is the worst idea ever. So if you're wanting to live on Io, it's your funeral, and that's on you, not me. But overall, Io is a really interesting moon, because its volcanoes, when they erupt, they give off radiation which fills up Jupiter's magnetic field, which, once again, I'll get into that later. But Io is a very dangerous moon. Actually, the most dangerous moon in the entire solar system. As you can see in this picture here, if you look on the very top of the moon, you can see a plume of smoke coming out, which is smoke erupting from one of Io's 400 active volcanoes. This is why Io is dangerous. Up next, we have the icy Europa. This icy moon is actually one of the more intriguing of the 4 Galilean moons, because scientists and astronomers are predicting that underneath Europa's icy surface could be, if we're correct, a slushy water ice ocean which may harbor alien life beyond our own. But unfortunately, due to the lack of technology, we are unable to confirm this. But we still have high hopes that hiding underneath all the ice on Europa could be alien life that is either similar to ours or different to ours. Only time will find out, until we have the right technology to figure out if what we're predicting is correct on this icy moon. Next, we have the colossal Ganymede, the largest of the 4 Galilean moons and the largest of Jupiter's 82 moons. But there's something funny about this large moon of Jupiter. It's rumored to be an oceanic moon, which is pretty strange considering that the majority of this moon is just rock. But not only that, but Ganymede, once again, is another highly likely candidate for future human colonization because it might have materials that we might be able to use to settle a base on this large moon of the gas giant. But once again, we are severely lacking the technology to get to Ganymede, let alone to Jupiter, and to do all of that. So all that, unfortunately, will have to wait and remain in science fiction. Last but not least, we have Callisto, the most distant of the 4 Galilean moons. Enormously cratered, way more cratered than our moon, Luna, and is also a very highly likely candidate for future human colonization, mainly because it has lots of materials that are going to be crucially important and useful for us for when we settle on this second largest of the Galilean moons of the mighty gas giant. And all these moons orbiting around it are being kept in order like it does to the solar system. And these are the sounds of the 4 Galilean moons. First up, the sound of the volcanic moon Io. Next up, Europa. Next, the colossal Ganymede. Last but not least, Callisto. Though one of the most famous features on Jupiter is none other than the Great Red Spot Anticyclonic Storm. This huge anticyclonic storm was first observed in 1830, and Galileo noticed it too, but he didn't really pay much attention to it. The top spinning speed of this storm makes all the more powerful hurricanes here on Earth look weak and like nothing. Because on Jupiter's Great Red Spot, since it has no land to stop it, the Great Red Spot is spinning at 245 miles per hour, faster than any other storm here on Earth, which the fastest storm here on Earth was topped at over 150 to 160 miles per hour. But Jupiter, and its anticyclonic storm, the Great Red Spot, makes the hurricanes here on Earth look tiny, puny, and worth nothing. But inside Jupiter's clouds are storms, lightning strikes, and thunder rattling in the clouds below. Unfortunately, we can't get down as far into Jupiter because it is way too hot and it's very, very dense pressure. If you were to dive down inside the gas giant, you would be crushed and boiled away from the temperatures, which the core of Jupiter is hotter than the surface of the sun. And I mean way, way, way hotter than the surface of our sun. But unfortunately, the Great Red Spot is shrinking. It's getting smaller and smaller over time, but keeps changing to a very different color, which honestly is quite surprising to me. But since Jupiter is a gas planet, it doesn't have any land to stop the hurricanes. But as we continue to observe Jupiter, the Great Red Spot will stay around for the next estimated 20 years. And in the next 20 years, the Great Red Spot won't be nothing at all anymore. However, one particular spacecraft is going to help us learn more about the Great Red Spot. And that particular spacecraft that'll help us learn all about Jupiter is none other than the one and only Juno spacecraft. This craft will help us learn more about our protector. Juno is a desk fan-shaped spacecraft whose mission is to help us study more about Jupiter, how it works, how it was formed, how it got here, what its purpose is, what it does, how it does it, etc. Juno here will help us answer all the questions that we have about the largest and most powerful planet in the solar system, which also turns out to be the oldest planet in the entire solar system. And that is what Juno here is gonna do for us.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and
on August 5th, 2011, Juno set off for Jupiter on its very important mission to help us learn more about the gas giant and how it works, both on the inside and the outside. This is the most important mission that any other spacecraft has dared to go on. This amazing and technologically advanced spacecraft will help us learn more about Jupiter's inner workings and outer workings.
Has been satisfied. Vehicle is starting back up to full thrust. And we have solids 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 jets. Visual indication that all solids are separated well. And the booster has begun its roll for spacecraft thermal constraints. Rates look good, plus battery voltages are stable. And the vehicle has now gone into closed-loop steering. And booster view is also in closed-loop control. Engine response looks good for the set mixed ratio. Current altitude is 45.8 miles. In altitude, downrange distance 69 miles. Velocity 5,413 miles per hour. Pyro valve activation. It is now fired. System's now pressurized at flight levels. We've begun our 2.5G throttle segment. Engine response looks good. Current altitude is 60 miles in altitude. Downrange distance 118 miles.
As it began to separate, Juno pops out like a flower and sets off for the gas giant Jupiter. It has a long journey ahead of it, so Juno has a long way to travel to the largest planet in the solar system. On the 4th of July of 2017, Juno arrived at Jupiter. It took Juno between 2011 and 2017 to make it to the gas giant. It flew towards Jupiter at the fastest speed ever by any spacecraft, at 165,000 miles per hour, the fastest spacecraft ever built. As Juno made its approach to Jupiter, it slowed down and began its first orbit around this colossal planet. Juno is equipped with special onboard instruments to detect a magnetic field, its power, the plasma readings, everything it needs to study this colossal monster of a planet. It begins to slow itself down as it enters its first orbit around the gas giant, slowing itself down from 165,000 miles per hour to just under 100,000 miles per hour. And then it slowed itself down to 75,000 miles per hour and is now in a stable orbit around this colossal planet, which it will be studying for the next few years. And its mission is very important because we need to learn more about Jupiter and how it plays its role in protecting us from potentially deadly asteroids and comets. Throughout the entirety of its mission, Juno has been planned to make over 34 to 37 orbits around Jupiter. As it's doing that, it also studies its moons, especially the 4 Galilean moons, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. And as you can see here, throughout the course of its mission, Juno will be making multiple orbits around the gas giant, 37 orbits around Jupiter, as it's studying the monster planet, as the planet continues to do its job, as Juno flies around it and studies this monster. And as long as nothing goes wrong, Juno will be fine as it studies the most powerful planet in the entire solar system. The very first strange discovery that Juno makes is that Jupiter has a ring system. Yeah, apparently Saturn's not the only one who has ring systems. Yeah. However, as Juno began its first approach to Jupiter, its onboard instruments and onboard microphone, for the very first time ever, captured the audio of which has never ever been heard before by man. It's the audio recording of which we call the Roar of Jupiter. This is the audio recording that Juno captured as it made its approach to Jupiter, which they call the Roar of Jupiter. So what y'all just heard is the bow shock that Jupiter produced as Juno came into its magnetic field. But that's not the only audio that Juno captured. It also captured this. This is the incredible video that Juno gets during its flyby, its multiple flybys of the gas giant Jupiter. This is some of the most breathtaking video that we have ever gotten from another planet, where a spacecraft like Juno gets us the best footage ever of this colossal planet. Next, Juno gives us an insight of what might be going on deep beneath Jupiter's mysterious clouds. Then, Juno gives us an infrared view of Jupiter's North Pole, as you can see here, the North Polar region here of Jupiter has this thermal imagery which Juno captured, which shows us what the top of the gas giant is like if we could see it with our own eyes. This is incredible video that Juno got for us. And even seeing this for the first time, I too am just amazed of how much detail there is of this gas giant that has been protecting us for billions of years since it formed. But this is one of the most important pieces of evidence of what Jupiter is like that Juno captured. What you're seeing here are the multiple layers of the multiple bands of clouds that circle around the gas giant. This is absolutely mind-blowing information that we have ever gotten from Jupiter, all thanks to Juno during its mission to this colossal planet. But then, Juno gets us yet more audio recordings, but this one is of the plasma waves that are being given off from Jupiter's magnetic field and its magnetosphere. But unfortunately, Juno will not be staying around Jupiter forever. Because, in order to prevent contaminating its moons, such as Europa, NASA will be doing something that will pretty much scar them forever. In the final leg of its mission, in July of 2023, Juno will be making its final grand finale of its mission to Jupiter. NASA will plummet this amazing spacecraft directly into Jupiter's atmosphere, whereas Juno breaks into Jupiter's atmosphere, this amazing desk fan-like spacecraft will spin its way into Jupiter's atmosphere, burning up and adding multiple tons of Earth material to the gas giant's mass, marking the end of its incredible mission. It'll be all thanks to Juno that we will now know more about Jupiter, how it works, how it formed, everything. Jupiter will continue to be a very important character in the story of the solar system. All of its moons will provide us with glimpses of the future of this gas giant. Even though Jupiter is shrinking at 2 centimeters per year, this gas giant will continue to serve its purpose even after the sun becomes a red giant. Jupiter will always be the solar system's protector and bodyguard. And even when we move away from the solar system and find a new home, Jupiter will always have a special place in our hearts, and especially in the hearts of NASA. The Great Red Spot will be remembered for years and years to come. This has been the story of Jupiter and the mission that Juno is still on. But in the future, all thanks to Juno, we will learn more about the king of our solar system, Jupiter.